I'm Debbie Bell-Hosking for FinextraTV, and I'm talking to Chris Allen of Cognizant, particularly about their recent research called the Open Finance Paradox. Welcome, Chris.
Pleasure to be here.
You can tell from the way I said that. My first question has to be, why paradox in the title?
Well, actually, there wasn't just one paradox. There was a couple of paradoxes in the research that we found. The first is really everyone's doing something slightly different. So those big banks, those CMA9, are really aggressively using open finance, whereas some of the smaller, perhaps building society and challenger organisations aren't taking those steps as aggressively. The second paradox is probably a little bit more subtle, where when we asked these institutions about some of their plans for the future and their business strategy, the things that they told us could easily be at least partially solved by open finance, and oftentimes they weren't making that link.
So those are the paradoxes that inspired the title of the research. What about the main guts of the body? What were your key findings?
Well, there was two key findings. So the first of them was really about everyone's doing something different. So those big banks, those CMA9, are really investing in open finance. So we found oftentimes they're delivering between 5 and 7 products a year using open finance, whereas some of the building societies are a little bit more conservative, maybe only 1 or 2 products are on their roadmap to be delivered using open finance. The second finding was more one of approach. So some institutions are viewing open finance as a separate product or service or app, where others are really looking to embed open finance in everything they're doing, every interaction point with the customer.
So Chris, with all this research, were there any surprises?
Yes, lots. And probably one of the biggest surprises was just the level of ambition out there for open finance. So particularly within some of the CMA9 and neobanks, really aggressively pursuing open finance and lots of different products and services. It was also interesting that on the other end of the scale, there was, in some players, a real reluctance to embrace open finance, being really quite conservative in how they're looking to adopt it.
There's a lot of research in this body of work that has been done. So how did you find that compared with your dealings every day with your own clients?
One of the first conversations we always have with clients is they always want to know what everyone else is doing in open finance. And this is why the research was so important. It really allowed our clients to kind of benchmark themselves against what other people are doing, but not just in terms of raw numbers and products and services to deliver, but also in how their organisations configured and some of their beliefs around open finance as well.
As I said before, there's been a lot of research into your work, so it's only fair I ask you for some recommendations and some suggestions. So the first would be, what would you have to say to encourage those so-called laggards who might be waiting to see what other people are doing first in the industry? What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say is that actually there's a vibrant, proven, scalable ecosystem there to support them. So whereas a few years ago, I really don't think there would have been the partners that were proven at scale, that definitely isn't the case now. So lean into that ecosystem and really use them to help accelerate your journey.
And how about those people who are leaning into the ecosystem, those innovators who are accelerating? Should they rest on their laurels, or are there more steps?
Absolutely not. And probably the biggest thing that these innovators, these leaders can do is start to think about how they can reframe their competition. So instead of them comparing themselves to other banks, really starting to look a bit broader and what some of the non-banks are doing with open finance, because that's where we're starting to see some of the real innovation.
And talking about all that innovation is very exciting and something to look forward to. And Chris, thank you for sharing your research with us.
My pleasure.